Thank you for joining the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston for our weekly online ministers forum. I'm the Reverend D. Scott Cooper, Assistant Minister of Congregational Life, filling in for Dr. Boston, who's away this week. These programs are conversations with community organizers, artists, scholars, religious leaders, and others about how we can collectively address the present crises. Their purpose is to offer members of our community and all who wish to join us online science-based resources. Today, I'm joined by Cameron Young, who is on the staff of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA, Southern Region Congregational Life Staff. We'll be talking about what the UUA is and does, what they can do for us, and what we can do for them. Cameron's a native Texan and lifelong Unitarian Universalist. Having grown up in those programs, they developed a particular affinity for youth and young adult ministry. Cameron was a lifespan religious educator in Fort Worth for 5 years and served a 2-year elected position as Young Adult Co-Facilitator at General Assembly. A professional musician and classically trained singer, Cameron's an avid traveler, die-hard fan of Dallas sports teams, and devoted coffee drinker. So for those of you who are with us on the Ministers Forum for the first time, let me say a few words about Unitarian Universalism. We're a religious tradition that celebrates the possibility of goodness within each human heart, the transformative power of love, and the clarifying voice of reason. We believe that we need not think alike to love alike. We hope that you find these forums a source of connection, hope, and clarity. So Cameron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you and to be virtually with First Houston.
Right? It's good to hear your voice and see your face. Before I ask all the things going on with the UUA, I want to talk about your life growing up as a Unitarian Universalist. So many of us found this church later in life, either growing up in another or no religion at all. So talk a bit about being a lifelong UU and your journey to where you've gotten to be now.
My journey with Unitarian Universalism is actually it's interesting. It's a bit of a patchwork, really. So my mom was a UU. She was in LRY, which is Liberal Religious Youth, which was our national youth group in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And she brought me to a lot of different UU churches growing up. Those being, and a variety of worship services. Some of my earliest memories of worship in church were of like the guy from Brave Combo reciting the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner at Denton UU Fellowship, or like an all Beatles service at the Red River UU Church in North Texas. I became really active though in the UU Church for the first time as a teenager, joining Young Religious Unitarian Universalists at First Unitarian Church of Dallas, which that is also where Reverend Scott is from, so he has known me since I was a teenager. And that's where I became really an active, committed Unitarian Universalist.
Excellent. So,
oh, and you know what? I almost forgot. So when I was a UU youth, my first at that point in time we called them district rallies. My first district rally as a teenager was actually at First UU Houston. So that was my first really broader denominational experience outside of my own church, and I spent the whole weekend there. So First Houston is a really kind of a familiar place for me.
very cool. So, and you also taught lifespan religious education, and now you're actually in seminary. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I recognize my own calling toward ministry, and I use that term really broadly. I think there are many different ways of doing the ministry, even if you're not necessarily an ordained minister, but I have been called toward ordination for some time now. Um, and I began working in the parish as a religious educator um, when I was about 24, which is probably too young, anyways. Um, but I made it, I survived, and then I finally decided to enter seminary when I was 28, which was actually just 2 years ago. And I am currently at Bright Divinity School, getting my Master of Divinity, which is also where Reverend Scott went. It is in Fort Worth, Texas, and loosely affiliated with Texas Christian University.
Right. It's on the campus.
Yes. It is a Disciples of Christ seminary, even though the Disciples of Christ mostly divested from TCU in the 80s when they refused to take a stand against apartheid. But that's a whole different, a whole different story.
Whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful campus. I can't stress that enough. Definitely. It's been my experience that people find a UU church, like the people they meet, they like the people they meet and the services and the programs, and sometimes they even join but don't know a lot about the larger Unitarian Universalist movement. Also, a lot of people who grow up in other churches are familiar with denominations and kind of that general structure. So the Unitarian Universalist Association, as stated in the name, is an association of congregations which functions differently, strictly speaking, than a denomination. So tell us a little bit about the history and the function of the UUA.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Unitarianism and Universalism were once two separate faiths and faith institutions, and in some parts, in some regards, still are. There are just Unitarian congregations and just Universalist congregations. But what we now know as the Unitarian Universalism and the Unitarian Universalist Association um, came as a product of the 1960s. So I mentioned liberal religious youth before. The liberal religious youth was a movement born out of the Unitarian youth in America and the Universalist youth in America, realizing that to do justice work, that their forces would be better when combined, and so they combined to form the liberal religious youth. And if you've ever sung the hymn "We Would Be One," that hymn was written in dedication of them merging. So it was actually the youth who merged first, and then these two separate faith traditions based in the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America would then go on to merge in the early 60s, inspired by the liberal religious youth. So these two institutions would merge and form what we now know as Unitarian Universalism and the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. So we're structured a little differently than a lot of faiths you may be familiar with. So Catholics, for example, they are centrally governed. They have popes and bishops and dioceses, and the priests are appointed by those centrally governed pieces. But we as UUs have a rich tradition in congregational polity. So congregations are essentially autonomous. So the congregations, though, covenant with one another. They covenant with one another, they share resources, and they fund this national organization. But we as an association aren't here to govern how congegations conduct their business, because they have the autonomy to do do that themselves, but we are here to be supportive companions of their process, and we are here to provide sort of the larger institutional resources to do the ministry that these congregations want to do, and to amplify our UU values.
Different congregations, different fellowships, churches join the UUA. What are some of the things that those different churches get by being a member of the UUA?
So the UUA it comprises of multiple departments. One of them being the Lifespan Faith Engagement Department, who I'm not a part of, but I work closely with. They provide ample resources for how to do faith development in congregations. They provide a lot of curriculum, Tapestry of Faith being one of the big free curricula that's available online to be used in religious education programs. We provide support networks for ministers and religious professionals. The department I work for is Congregational Life, and Congregational Life is guided by what we like to call the 4 C's: coaching, companioning, connecting, and challenging. So by coaching, we're here to have to be consultants and to be partners. We consult with congregations really on a variety of things they may need support on. That could be anything from governance, how to run a board effectively, to how to get a faith development program started, to, oh my God, there's this a massive conflict in the church and we're at risk of splitting and losing all our money. Because that, unfortunately that sometimes happens, but we're here to coach congregations through that. And we're here to companion. So we are your partners. We're here to be your support network, to be listening ears, because we know doing the ministry is hard. There's a phrase that I love is I put my hand in yours so that we can do together what we cannot do alone. So we are here to go on that path with you of doing ministry, so you don't have to do it alone, so you don't have to sit on congregational islands. Which can often, I've been in a congregation, and it sometimes it feels very alone. You sometimes lose a sense of that broader connection. We also connect. We are here to connect you with other resources that you might need from the association. If congregational life, if those resources that you need are not part of congregational life necessarily, we can connect you with other departments like Lifespan Faith Engagement, which I mentioned, like the Ministerial Credentialing Office, like the UU Service Committee, or the UU College of Social Justice. So we know the landscape and know where to plug you in. We also know what other congregations we maybe could connect you with. Let's say First Houston is wanting to create a justice initiative for migrants, because we are in Texas. We could say, hey, we know of an organization called the Texas UU Justice Network. Or we know of this other church in San Antonio that's also doing immigration ministry. Perhaps we can connect the two of you. So we're here to connect you with the association, to connect you with each other, support that you might need. And we're also here to challenge. If we see if we want congregations to be the best representations of Unitarian Universalism that they can be. Um, we want, our values amplified, and that is so we're here for that too. Um, if there are things that come up um, that we feel could be uh, sources of growth for congregations in terms of representing those values, we will absolutely be vocal about that. Not in a finger wagging way, or not even and again not in a way of governance, because we don't have that authority, but we are here to amplify Unitarian Universalism.
Definitely. That's really informative. I don't know that I'd heard. Was it four C's?
Four
Uh,
C's:
yeah, reiterate that again. I love that.
coaching, companioning, connecting, challenging.
Great. That's an easy way to help some of the to help remember some of the things that you all are able to help with.
And I want to reiterate, our Southern Region staff is available to all of you, to lay leaders, to religious professionals, to ministers. That's what we're here for. So call on us anytime.
That's exactly the reason I wanted to invite you to this ministers forum, because I don't think everyone realizes what a great resource we have there with you all. Um, and I was going to ask about how it breaks up into regions and how you're part of the southern region, and just kind of talk about how that works and how you all focus on certain areas and that type of thing.
Yeah. So the UA, way back when, was comprised in districts, and I believe in 2013, most, not all, but most of the districts voted to regionalize, essentially to merge resources, to be more effective in doing UU ministry. The southern region, the southwest district, and the mid-south district, and the southeast districts were actually three of the districts that were some of the first to regionalize into what we now know as the southern region, which is Texas to Florida. And so our southern region staff serves congregations in that entire area. And in total, the UUA is comprised of 5 regions, and that's the southern region, the Mid-America region, the Pacific Western region, the Central East region, and the New England region. Did that answer your question, Scott?
I was just trying to get a picture of how you on the different regions were able to help the people in those regions with those things.
Yes, absolutely. And there are regional specific things that come up. I mean, one example, which I know you in Houston are especially aware of, is that we have a lot of hurricanes in our region, for example, and we you know a lot of some of our southern region staff members were instrumental in the creation of the UU Disaster Relief Fund, which is heavily funded and heavily utilized, and it's there for congregations in need who are adversely affected by hurricanes. So yeah, there are regional specific things that come up, that that since many of us on Southern Region staff, since almost all of us live here in the Southern Region, most of us are from the Southern Region. Um, we understand the landscape and the culture in ways that make our congregations unique in ways that would be different from congregations in other geographical areas.
Well, we actually, our shared offering Sunday was for uh, the UUA Disaster Relief Fund because of the Hurricane Laura being so recently. So I'm glad you put in that extra plug there for that, because that's such a helpful resource.
Oh, that's awesome, and thank you to y'all for, and I say y'all, absolutely native Texan right here. Thank you to y'all for taking up the plate for the disaster relief fund.
Definitely, definitely. Shifting gears a hair, you were a young adult co-facilitator at General Assembly. First, some folks watching may not even know what General Assembly is, so talk about that before you tell us what you did as a co-facilitator.
Yeah, so General Assembly, or GA, is our national UU convention. Um, to those of you who feel like this is a small religion that nobody has ever heard of, you're not alone. I think we've all kind of been there before until we show up to GA and get a chance to be with 4, 5, 6,000 other UUs. It is, if you've never been, it's sort of like nothing you've ever seen in the world. Just imagine 4, 5, 6,000 UUs all in the same building. It rotates in its location every year. And this year, of course, because of the pandemic, we had our first virtual GA. I do hope we can go back to being in person at some point, but GA it's where all the business happens, but also where all the fun happens. It's where we vote as an association on major items of governance that have come up. It's where we elect our UUA president, right, who right now is the Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray. But it's also where a lot of workshops and programs are offered, and communities are formed, intentional communities are formed, the young adults being one of them.
Tell us more about the young adults.
Yeah, so I guess it was 2016 and 2017, I was the co-facilitator for young adults at GA, and we were responsible for programming for young adults, and responsible for sort of helping to form a socially cohesive young adult community at GA, because it's easy to feel, especially for first time GAers, to feel lost in the sea of all these people and all this programming. So we wanted to make sure our young people have a place to feel welcome and recognized. And therefore there is youth at GA, and there are young adults at GA, and we create intentional programming that caters to them. And a lot of youth and young adults come to GA as delegates, as voting delegates to their congregation, and there's sometimes a learning curve with that, because our governance process can be, especially on a national level, can be a little complex. So we sort of help navigate our young folks through that, and just be a place of support, and put together a variety of offerings. I think we had, when I was co-facilitator, I'm trying to remember of what the offerings we had. We had everything from UU Relationships 101 to a bridging out of young adulthood service, which, if you're familiar, we have teens who bridge into young adulthood. But when somebody is 35 going on to 36, they're leaving young adulthood and entering middle adulthood, really. And a lot of times that passage isn't honored, so we did that, and just a variety of other things.
Oh, very cool. As you alluded to, sometimes people um, feel like we're part of a small religion and don't realize. And I think that goes especially for some of the youth, when they're in a small church without a large youth group, they don't feel really part of a a tribe, so to speak. And once they go to either GA or even a rally, they all of a sudden find their tribe and people like them and people kind of on their wavelength. Maybe you can talk about rallies for a moment too.
Yeah, so, well, what to say? I mean, in my day, there was, we got together, we didn't sleep, we drank this concoction called Groovy Juice, which was um, energy drink and pixie sticks, I think were among the ingredients that I had back then. But yeah, so a little crazy, and it's in their ideal forms. There are places for young UUs to be together, to be connected, to share our faith, to do service work. There's a service trip and that has historically been a component of rallies, and really to grow our faith, to do faith formation in a way that is young and energetic. I think young UUs, they get to experience a lot of things that aren't maybe readily accessible to sort of the adult newcomers. Circle worship, I think, is another really wonderful thing that I wish more of our older adult UUs got to experience. It is a chance to worship in a way that is not as traditional, not traditional, in the pulpit, Sunday with the pews, which also is very important. But circle worship is really a beautiful organic alternative incarnation of how we can do worship together. So that is one of many things that I think youth bring to our faith. Another, obviously, is how they do justice work, which I think we're seeing these massive youth-led movements in Black Lives Matter. Well, that's not youth-led, but it's young adult-led, and in the climate movement with Greta Thunberg. I think there's something profound and rich in our tradition too about what youth bring to our movement.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. You mentioned the pandemic and how General Assembly had to be virtual this year. I think the pandemic has changed so much about the way we do church. I know certainly in Houston, it's just kind of turned everything on its head and everything having to be virtual, and from our services to all the way the groups meet. So I'm sure the same thing has happened with the way you're doing your work with the UUA. So talk a bit more about how the pandemic shapes how you're helping congregations.
It has changed the work, and still some of the fundamentals stay the same. Um, Before the pandemic, we were traveling all the time. We were going to lots of different congregations, and for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it was to do workshops, it was to facilitate retreats, it was sometimes to fill pulpits, and the pandemic has changed it in some senses. But I mean, the beauty is that we can still be together virtually. So it's been an opportunity for us to slow down and not travel as much yet, and think of alternative ways to be in community and to do faith formation. And so a lot of that has been figuring the virtual piece of faith formation out, and being companions with congregations in that, and really, we learn just as much, if not more, from congregations as we can bring to them in terms of doing ministry in the time of pandemic, because we're all coming from the same experience level, which is not that much, and it's just kind of a phase in trial and error for all of us. I would say that the function of the church, as far as the function of the church goes, pastoral care and small group ministry becomes ever more vital, because these are times of adversity and times where we need close connection more than anything. And so we want to be your thought partners in doing those types of ministry. As a matter of fact, the Southern Region is hosting 2 webinars next month on leading small group ministry virtually. So just putting a little plug, that is October 14th and October 17th, I believe. You can check our website. You can Google the Southern Region of the UUA, and it'll pull up our calendar. So that's just one of many ways in which our work has shifted. We're still here to do the 4 C's. We're still here to amplify UU values, but so the ends have not changed, but perhaps the ways and means have a little bit more. We're not doing worship in the same way necessarily. We're not convening in the same way. So we're trying to be innovative in those ways, and we're trying to foster innovation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're about to run out of time, so I want to end by thanking you so much for this. Has really been interesting, and you've taught us a lot about not only what you do, but what the UUA does. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Scott, so much for having me. Like I said, like I told y'all, I've known Reverend Scott for a long, long time, and he's been a mentor and a role model in ministry, and it's so cool to be doing this here with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, obviously, I think the world of you too. I'm so proud of what you're doing right now, and so excited for you, and just really pleased that you were able to join me today.
Likewise.
Found this video to be helpful, please consider joining us for our weekly worship service. It's posted online each Sunday at 10:30 a.m. and features music and prayers in addition to a sermon. I'll again be preaching this week. Thank you to our staff for making this video possible. It was produced by Christian Holmes. Alma Vizcarra assisted with the editing. We'll see you all online soon and in person as soon as it is possible for us to gather again. And please remember that no matter how isolated you feel, we are all in this together.